Coming to you live from God's country, the beautiful mountains of Northeast Tennessee. We are braver than the rest. At noon tonight is my brother Jared.
Yeah, man.
Good to have you here, man, as always. And yeah, we got some things to unpack tonight. So hopefully you're tuning in. Hopefully you like and share. We never say this, but we need to, because you know what? I have trouble with self-promotion. I always have. I've always been like, you know what, man? Let God do the lifting up. I don't have to fight for this, but we're going to fight for it. Yeah. So like and share. Yeah. Like and share.
Absolutely.
Every
give us
chance
a subscribe.
You get.
Any chance you get, give us a like, give us a subscribe.
We got some great stuff on the docket tonight. I want us to. I had a lengthy conversation last week with my father a bit on. We talked a little bit about immigration. Yeah, and I was really challenged by it because, as a believer in Christ, right, the Christian perspective, I've heard people say, "Well, Jesus was an immigrant." You know, no, he wasn't really, because he created the whole thing, right? Like, he's not an immigrant. This is all.
He wasn't a visitor.
Yeah, he's not a visitor. This is his.
No.
But it's interesting because the Christian perspective is we're to love. We're to love with open hands and open hearts. We're to bring people in. We're to, Jesus says, "Whosoever will may come," but there's also a part of it that, I really wrestle with this because, when it becomes, I liken it to this. When I was in youth group, we had a teaching. When I was in youth group, this is 150 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, you're old.
Yeah. So, but there was a teaching. This was back when you would do physical labor instead of sitting in front of a screen all day.
Right.
And so the teaching was, if you're climbing up a ladder and there's somebody, you're the believer, you're on the ladder, right? And you're trying to reach down and pull somebody up the ladder.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen, right? They're going to pull you off the ladder.
Right.
Much
Are you
easier.
pulling them up, or are they pulling you down? That sort of thing.
Right. In the same way, wow, this is a stretch, but in the same way, it's, right now, the immigration thing is pulling us down the ladder.
It is.
And it's a struggle.
Yeah.
I mean,
it is. And, I've thought about, it's funny you mentioned that, because I had some notes here. We didn't talk about this actually before the show, this part of it, but, is it, and this is the moral dilemma that we're in, is it okay to ruin a country? And I know that's hyperbolic terminology, but
Jared,
I know. How dare you?
These are hardworking people.
Is it okay to ruin a country or to put other people in danger for the sake of what you consider to be compassionate? Mm-hmm. And on top of that, it's not just that, but you are raising the crime rate. Mm-hmm. You're raising poverty. Mm-hmm. You are drawing us further into debt. You are sending people into unknown land. These would be the illegal immigrants coming across the border.
Right.
And they become desperate. We're bringing them in the winter months. You're going to have cold, hungry, desperate people. And you're saying that this is compassion.
Yeah.
And I find that disingenuous. And I think that it's a bit of, I'm sorry, I'm very heated about this, but I feel like it's a cop-out to say, oh no, we're the richest country in the world.
We can handle this.
We can handle this. And no, we can't.
Right.
We really can't. It would be, I'm a huge proponent of immigration.
We all came from somewhere else.
Absolutely.
Right?
We all came from somewhere else. And people like to say back to Ellis Island, and, people, they were undocumented. They just showed up at the docks. We didn't have a social safety net. And, we were in a much different place financially and on a world scale.
Oh, much different.
Yeah. And these are people that showed up and assimilated. Mm-hmm. They wanted to come. The people that are coming here now, there is no call for assimilation. In fact, there's the opposite.
Right. We're catering to their culture.
Right. Exactly. And so our American ideals and our American values, they haven't had a chance to prove that they are interested in even, recognizing those things.
Right.
And that is the core of what's holding this country together.
Right.
So I get it.
Our core values, right.
Yeah. And one final thing, and then I'll shut up. But
no, please don't. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. But the compassion of families. I hear a lot of people saying, "But this is just families. It's mothers and their kids. They're coming across the border." And there are some of those, but it is a very small percentage. The vast majority, because there's video upon video upon video, you can see these whole caravans. They are military-aged fighting males. And I will say it again, and I will shout it from the rooftops for as long as I live, that when men flee, they take their families. When men go to war, they go alone. And I've watched these interviews happen on the border, and people are asking them, do you have a family? Yeah, but they didn't bring their family. Their family is still back in.
Well, but the theory is they're going to make that money and send it back to their family, Jared. Come on. I mean, especially in places where there's no work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because I did a study on the impact of immigration on these sanctuary cities, sanctuary counties.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And just a simple Google started as just like, let's just Google what the impact is. Every article that I read that Google gave me was how it will benefit. It helps with the economy. It helps with this. It helps with that. These articles are from 2020, 2019. I want something current.
Give me something current.
Let me know where we're at right now.
Right.
Here's where we're at right now.
Right.
Here, let me just spit this out. City Council rejects a bid to ask voters to weigh in on Chicago's sanctuary city policy because they know they don't want this anymore. New York is spending, and I can pull it up. New York is spending. This blows my mind. New York, Denver spending $2 million a week on sheltering migrants. New York has surpassed a total of $1.7 billion. Chicago has spent $320 million on housing immigrants. So what do? The five mayors of these five cities that this article mentions they're going to go ahead and meet with Biden to get some money.
Print more money, because that's obviously the solution.
And then, of course, it's Greg Abbott's fault.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that you sit back and go, well, wait a minute. Does Greg Abbott have a gold tooth that he's going to give? Where's Texas getting this money from to support them? When you're crying about what you've got, which is
minuscule.
It is a fraction. I mean, Texas has bused over 12,500 immigrants to Washington, D.C., 35,000 migrants to New York City, 29,000 to Chicago since August of 2022, 3,000 to Philadelphia, 15,000 to Denver, and 1,400 to Los Angeles.
That's like a week's worth of people. You know?
Yeah. And when you've got, in one day, they had 12,000 cross a couple weeks ago. Remember that?
Yep.
12,000 cross in one day.
Yep.
And Washington's crying about it.
Yep.
New York's crying about it. But Texas, you better shut up about it because you're Texas and you're right there.
Yeah.
It's not, boy, you want to talk about anger.
I did in my last video, by the way, Continue Freedom,
Yes.
go check it out.
Yeah,
But-
go check it out for sure.
Shameless plug.
It's great.
But,
and it's much shorter than we are.
Yeah, it's like
which
20
is saying a lot because I'm 5-0. So, yeah.
I got you. A height joke. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm only at 5'8".
Yeah.
But no, New York had 30-some thousand people, and he's suing the bus companies for $700 million.
Oh, of course. Wow.
Yeah, because and basically what this came down to was $22,000 per person, and was it 700 million? I might have gotten that number wrong. It's hundreds of millions of dollars. He's suing the bus companies, so he's going after the little guy because down in Texas, Paxton, what's his name? I forget his first name.
I want to say Bill, but it's not.
I know, no,
because he's the actor.
I think
right?
it's Ken Paxton.
Okay,
he's the AG down there. He's got a stable of like 1,500 lawyers.
Okay,
and they're going to fight it. He's fighting all these cases all across the country. He's got the largest department of lawyers of any attorney general in the country, I think. So he's fighting battles for la-di-da-di everybody all over the place.
Sure.
But instead they were like, well, we can't fight him. So let's just go after the little guy. Let's go after the bus drivers and try to make people scared to drop migrants off up here. But can I bring up a point about the money?
Absolutely.
I'm gonna hop in on that one. That the other part of it is people say we're the most prosperous country in the world. We're the wealthiest country in the world. And they are correct technically in GDP and in our tax revenue. Like, we bring in about $4.5 trillion in tax revenue every year. The government does. But when they start talking about millions, billions, trillions, I feel like people get off base or
We
they
get glazed over. We don't understand that.
right. It's like these numbers are so astronomical. So this is a very simple. If you've
Yeah,
heard
in my
this,
world, it's like hundreds. Talk hundreds. I get it.
talk hundreds.
Yeah, yeah.
And I broke it down for us, by the way, to that level. But let's go over thousands, millions, billions, and trillions real quick.
Okay.
And I did it in seconds. So 1,000 seconds is 16 minutes. 1 million seconds is 11 days, 13 hours, 46 minutes, and 40 seconds. 1 billion seconds is a little over 31 and a half years. And 1 trillion seconds is 31,688 years. So if you want to talk about the exponential difference between those numbers,
Wow.
this is what we're talking about.
Wow.
And then, I'm saying all this, by the way, because we are out of money.
Yeah.
We are absolutely out of money. And our debt right now, everybody knows, $34 trillion. We just passed it. I don't know if you saw my last video, but I had fireworks and everything. It was great. Y'all should watch it.
Yeah.
But on
Balloons.
right, balloons, all kinds of stuff. Yeah. So I had 34 trillion in debt. Congratulations. Revenue, that's $4.5 trillion. Spending $6 trillion. So we're spending $1.5 trillion more than we're bringing in tax revenue every year. And Mike Johnson came out and was like, "Oh, we did this spending cut, right?"
Yeah.
And the spending cut is about a 1% cut to this $1.5 trillion. So I broke all this down to normal person money, because what does all that mean?
Right.
This means that a family with $45,000 a year, I just took off 8 zeros, right?
Okay.
So a family's making $45,000 a year, but we spend $60,000 every year. And we are currently sitting on $340,000 in credit card debt. And then we're saying, this new spending plan, we're going to spend $15,000, right? An additional $15,000. And the cost of just the immigrants coming across, think about this, on a $45,000 a year income is $1,650 a year while we're carrying all that debt. Does that even remotely seem feasible? $165 billion dollars, just to take care of the illegal immigrant problem in this country. We are out of money.
Yeah.
We don't have money. We have nothing but debt. And we are, every time that we say, "Oh, well, we'll just print more money." This is the same thing as saying we're going to spend ourselves out of debt, or we're going to drink ourselves out of alcoholism,
Right.
or we're going to do so many drugs that we never want to do them again.
Mm-hmm.
This is the
Come on.
same mindset that we are going through with the spending in this country. And there's a deeper root cause to it, which we'll get into after a while. But golly, I get so fired up about this because I understand the compassionate argument. I truly do.
I think that's the big thing, right? I get, like, when you start on this, people automatically get their, forgive the term, but they get their Irish up about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, don't you, we got to be compassionate." And they're
okay,
people
I'm
too.
Irish. I'm part Irish.
Yeah, they're people too. Nobody's saying they're not.
No.
And I am all for it, going through the right channels. And does there need to be reform? Yes, there
100%.
does. Everybody
100%.
can agree there. That, you know what? Let's just stop right there. Here's something that Democrats and Republicans can agree on. Mm-hmm. There needs to be reform. It needs to be simpler and quicker.
Yeah.
Okay? Let's get that done. They can get that done.
Yes.
Get that done. But until then, there's a reason behind why the Senate and the House and they argue in Congress. They argue about it, and that is the conservative base, the Republicans, are recognizing the overwhelming Democratic support that's coming across from the border.
Yeah.
And in fact, we've got a if you pull that up, yeah,
That one.
yeah, the Pew Research party affiliation among immigrants by state, and if the light blue there on the big one, California, 48% of people coming across are Democratic leaning. 21% are Republican.
Yeah.
And it goes on and on. I mean, 48, 26 in Florida, 39, 26 in Illinois, Massachusetts, 67%, 17%.
Yeah.
And so when you see these numbers, you go, huh. We had one president that was trying to throw a wall up to keep them out. We have another president that wants it wide open. if we don't see the game that's being played here. And listen, Trump recognized the financial side of it. I think he wasn't about playing the politic game. I don't think with this. Put the wall up because we've got bad things happening. Right. On the other hand, I think what's happening today is purely politically motivated.
I agree.
If we can get more of them across, we can secure. We will never have to worry about an election again.
Yeah. The only thing that shocks me is that along with their, booklet of all the things that they need to, here's who to call to start getting some money every month and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm shocked that they aren't handing them ballots.
They might be.
Or having them check it off there. Just check it off here. We'll put the date on it later.
Even better. Why don't I check it off for you?
Yeah.
Because you don't understand it.
You don't speak English?
Right. You don't know who these people are. I'll tell you.
James O'Keefe was actually in I don't know if it was an airport or a bus station or whatever, and he was interviewing people. And he said, "Are you going to vote? These are illegal immigrants, just came here. They were in the processing. Are you coming here to vote?" "Yes." "Who are you voting for? Trump? Biden?" He goes, "Biden." Flat out.
Yeah.
"Yes, I'm going to vote." And how do they know that they can vote?
Number one. And
because people are telling them along the way.
Right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And this article that I'm reading about the mayors of 5 big cities, I've got to find it here. The AP they use this verbiage talking about the people that are coming across. Why don't you talk for a minute while
I can. Oh boy, you can talk.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about as far as voting goes. There's an additional sinister plot, I guess you could say.
Okay.
And this is the one I think we talked about this video. The lady this is a congresswoman, by the way, and she's kind of saying this is the craziest part is they are starting to say the quiet stuff out loud.
Yeah.
Yes, we want these people to vote. Yes, we want to use these people to redistrict, which is what this lady's talking about.
From Brooklyn, New York, we have a diaspora that can absorb a significant number of these migrants. And when I hear colleagues talk about, the doors of the inn being closed, no room in the inn, I'm saying, I need more people in my district, but just for redistricting purposes. And
Boom.
Those members
Exactly.
could clearly.
I mean,
Boom.
Did you ever think that you would see the day where they would openly say, "Yeah, we're doing this to redraw the district lines"? Part of it is the blue exodus, right, out of these blue states.
Sure, they're reaffirming their base.
Absolutely,
they're shoring up the.
California is losing people hand over foot. Illinois is losing people. All the blue states. New York is losing people, and we see them in our part of the country. They're coming to Tennessee. They're coming to Florida. They're coming to Texas. All coming to South Dakota. All these places that have been built up by free, constitutional ideals, based on Judeo-Christian principles,
Right.
and that have open capitalism, minimal regulation. I mean, this is the land of milk and honey. And they say, "Wow, I want that." Well, you know what? You're coming from the 5th largest economy in the world, and you wrecked it. You're coming from the financial center of the world, and you wrecked it. And now you're coming to our states, and they say,
Now, I will say this: like the vast majority of people from New York, and
I agree. I know some of them here.
Yeah, they're coming here not to change it.
Right.
They're coming here to embrace
They're coming
it.
here,
And the point you're trying to make is they're leaving.
yes,
And so it's almost like, okay, so what are we doing? Abbott, by sending these migrants to these cities where there's a mass exodus of what we could call a bastion of civility left, right?
Yeah.
These people that are still there that are like, you know what, this is wrong.
Yeah.
This is right. This is, they're leaving because they're like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And then they're filling it with their base who just have their hands out.
Right.
And some of them, they want to work. Some of them are here for their families. Some of them are, I'm not discounting the people, but it's interesting. In this article, it says in years past, when migrants arrived, they would be released and picked up by nonprofit groups before usually going to stay with a relative already in the U.S. That's how it's always been. But the nationalities of the people arriving have changed. Oh, that's interesting. The nationalities of the people arriving have changed, and many no longer have a place to go. What does that mean to you? I mean, the nationalities have changed. We've always had the southern border,
Yeah.
right? And since the beginning, we've always had. I mean, I've worked with people from Guatemala, from Peru. I've worked with people, and my best friends in high school are Cambodian. You know, we've always been open. What's changed? What are they? Why would they? Why would they have that caveat in there? The nationalities have changed. They no longer have a place to go. Who's coming across?
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. So they're saying that they're not just coming from South America.
Right.
They're coming from across the globe.
Right.
And so there's no, people, we congregate in like groups. That's
Yep.
just human nature. It's what we do.
Yep.
And so, Latina people congregate with Latina people.
Right.
Black people congregate with black people, white people, we kind of all over the place. But, people that you get into your little,
Well, especially in the city. This
the
is
city.
what happens, right?
Right.
You have Chinatown. You have, so you've
well,
got
you
these
follow
pockets.
common culture, right? I mean,
Right.
common culture is a piece of it. The difference now is that the common culture oftentimes doesn't include the central theme of America. Doesn't. You know what I'm saying? So there's no longer that drive, and it leaves when you do things like you take the Pledge of Allegiance out of school, and it leaves when you stop hanging up the American flag and you start hanging up whatever group identity flag
Right.
you want to hang up with.
Right.
So that national unity is no longer there, and in fact, they don't even want people to do that. They say, no, go and do your own thing in your own group.
We brought up a couple weeks ago, we talked about the Islamic Manifesto, right? How if they can get in and have
10%,
Yep, of the population, that's when they start to impose. They become vocal, impose their will. Sharia law, it's a 10% rule, and you look at it now, and it's like, what are our percentages at this point? I mean, what's minority in the U.S. at this point? What's majority? And I say this way because we actually don't know how many, what nationalities, what's coming across the border.
Yeah.
We know there's a flood.
Yeah.
And we don't know who they are. We don't know where they're from. We don't know. And so it's very dangerous time. It's very dangerous. And, the fact that the office of this Operation Lone Star that Abbott has instituted down in Texas. I mean, you think about this. So, these old articles that I read were talking about how, well, with the sanctuary city, crime actually doesn't change. Economy doesn't change, right? And this was in 2019, 2020. Today, we're seeing an outcry for money.
Yeah.
These cities can't handle it. And, this woman who we just watched who's saying, for redistricting and everything else,
Right.
Brooklyn's got the resources. No, they don't, unless the government bails them out.
Right.
Right? They're
Yeah.
asking for handouts because they can't afford it. Nobody can afford this. Nobody is prepared for it. It was okay when it was in Texas because that's a blue state or a red state, right? It's okay when the conservative base in Texas pays for this.
Yeah.
But when you give it back to them, it's a problem. But here we don't have a crime problem. Okay, since the launch of Operation Lone Star, and that was just a year ago or whatever, right? The multi-agency effort has led to 494,000 illegal immigrant apprehensions, 500,000 people,
Wow.
more than 38,000 criminal arrests, with more than 34,600 felony charges.
Wow.
But it won't impact crime if we let them in. Right?
Well, and Joe Biden, you've heard obviously about him suing Texas.
Yes.
For enforcing any type of law that's on. The border is our territory. You can't do it.
And here,
So
this is the kick in the teeth.
yeah.
Trump was talking all about fentanyl. Okay. This came out January 5th, just a few days ago. Since they instituted this policy, they've seized over 453 million doses of fentanyl.
Wow.
We got a problem.
It's a big problem.
That's a big problem.
We're already losing 100,000 people a year to fentanyl.
Yeah. 453 million doses of fentanyl, lethal doses.
I just read today, actually, that there's a seizure. It was in Florida, I believe. Some guys were seized with $12,000 in cash and enough fentanyl to kill 1.7 million people. Which, by fentanyl standards, it doesn't take a boatload of fentanyl to kill somebody. But still,
it reminds me, I've got this, we have girls. I have a girl. My wife's a girl.
Right.
Okay. So there's 2 girls in the house. And with that comes plug drains.
Okay.
Right. Every now and then you gotta get out there. You gotta clean them out. It's what you do as a dad, husband. And so we had this one that was a little stubborn, and I went to the hardware store and I'm like, listen, I need liquid Drano. Drano isn't going to do this. And the guy's like, I got what you need. And I'm like, okay. He goes, don't get this on your skin.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, okay, why? He's like, oh, you'll know why. I'm like, all right. Well, it's like pure acid.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it, but like,
wow.
This stuff was pure acid. And one drop of it got on my finger, and it was like I was running for a bathroom. It was burning a hole in my finger. Well, fentanyl is the same kind of thing, right? One drop.
Yep.
And they can put it anywhere.
Yeah.
Gas pumps. Anywhere. They put a drop of it anywhere, and then what happens to you? Have
you seen the cops ODing on it just by being? I watched there was a video of a police officer, and he was conducting a search. It was some dangerous individuals, whatever. They had pulled them over, suspected them of having drugs. I think they had weed in the car or something like that. And they were doing a search of the vehicle, and all of a sudden, and this is from the police car camera.
The video.
Yep. He starts swaying, and then he falls over, and his partner had warned him, hey, be careful in the back of, when you open up the back of that truck. When he lifted that hood, it wafted up just particulates of fentanyl, and he started overdosing right there on the job. His partner had to give him 4 doses of Narcan to keep him alive until the paramedics got there. And that's just from wafting up the stuff. This is a horrifically addictive and dangerous drug that is killing 100,000 people a year in America.
Yeah.
And we say, oh, no, just...
It's a war.
But it's compassion. But it's compassion. This is the opposite of compassion.
Right.
It's the opposite of compassion.
Yeah. It is. It is. In the name of love, we're doing the very opposite thing.
And I'll be honest, I know some people that are, again, I'm a social media stalker, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I see what they're posting, and I'm like, you just don't. There's context to this. I understand there are people suffering around the world, but with $34 trillion in debt, with a massive security problem, mental health problems in this country, we don't have the room. If New York, the most population dense city in our country, and one of the financial center of the world, essentially, can't handle 34,000 people, how in the world do you think that Texas is handling 70,000 people a week?
Yeah. Yeah.
But rural Texans don't matter. You know why? Because they're not in the news. New York, Eric Adams gets front and center on the news.
Center.
But these small towns where these people that are, average income of $30,000 a year, and they're overrun by people who don't speak the language, we have no idea who they are. Mm-hmm. You are putting them in danger. Mm-hmm. And that is not compassionate. That is the opposite of compassion.
No, compassion is fixing it. Fixing it.
Exactly.
So that they can come. So that we know who they are.
Exactly.
Fix it. But what you're doing is actually the opposite to the American citizen, and you're not giving these people, it's unjust is what it is. It's like you're not giving them a fair shake. And
we also have to say, we love our country, and we love the people in our country, and we love the fact that our country has been able to do so much good.
Absolutely.
Not just here, but around the world.
And sadly, though, people listening are going to argue that and be like, well, we are not good. We have done so much evil around the world, and we have done so much. And you know what? Sure, we've made mistakes, mm-hmm. right? I don't think anybody would say we haven't. But here's the real deal is I get to get up in the morning, and I get to have coffee. I get to watch my television. I can say what I want. I can wear what I want. I can go to a workplace and make $1, right? Those things right there are huge privileges on a global stage. Not everybody gets that.
Right.
And we just have done our best to give that away, right? We want democracy to spread because it is the only form of government where you are actually having a voice. Other than that, you don't have a voice. Now, sadly, in America, lately, and for a while, I don't believe we've had much of a voice. I think it's all been scripted. I think it's pre-written. Does it mean we don't vote? Nope, you continue to vote. But really what matters is you pray.
Yeah.
You know, you pray for your nation. You pray for your country. And, you know, you pray as hard as it is for Biden, for Harris. You pray for them.
Yeah.
That God would get a hold of them, that God would change their heart, that God would get them to see things differently than they've been seeing them. Because really right now, from the inside out, we're being destroyed, intentionally destroyed.
Yeah.
I read a thing the other day about them wanting to put kill switches in vehicles, right? So I was just like, why would they want to do that? Well, for drunk drivers, and it's not a kill switch. And you know, you go back and read up all this stuff. It's not really a kill switch. It's erratic driving. It'll stop erratic driving and whatever. And nobody can control it. The car controls it. Okay. You can say whatever you want about it, but the bottom line is, if they control the electricity in the grid, you're driving an electric vehicle. They control you.
Yeah. 100%.
Combustion is the only way to get from point A to point B without them saying you can or can't, until they start to ration your gas, right?
Right.
Which is going to happen.
Yeah, will happen eventually.
Yeah. In fact, we talked about 2024 being the year that things start to fall down the stairs for everybody in the world. You look at the economy of China, you look at the economy of the U.S., it's unsustainable what's happening.
Yeah.
And the immigration thing is so incredibly one-sided and self-serving that I feel bad. These people are being used as a tool.
Yeah.
And there's, you know, at this point we can say there's a million people that are good people, honest people, hardworking people, God-fearing people. I mean, most of them are Catholic, right? Coming across, like there's a big group of Catholics that are coming across. These are not bad people, but there's also, in that mix, military-aged men who are not coming to, you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
So it's so important for us to get a hold of it, get control of it, not only because we need to know who's coming across and stop all the crime and everything else, but if we don't get any control of it, right? And even as a Democrat, if you're a Democrat, how can you not want a fair fight? How can you not want a fair election? This isn't going to be a fair election. We'll never see a fair election again because they're trying to flood their ranks, and they're doing it at the expense of New York. They're doing it at the expense of Philadelphia, of Denver. They're doing it at the expense of all these Democratic mayors who just can't seem to open their eyes, right? Because they're blaming Greg Abbott for trucking these people up, right?
You know, I think they have their eyes open. I think they are promised something in the George Soros promised land. I believe is why they're doing it intentionally. They're willing to sacrifice their own people for some power or some position or something in the future. It might be in another administration. It might be.
It'll be interesting
I
to see.
truly believe some of them are ignorant.
Well, yes.
And pray that the Lord can put their IQ into the triple digits. That's what I pray. Give them an IQ over whatever.
Let them see clearly
right.
what is happening. Right.
But others, I truly believe it's nefarious. And it's if it's okay for me to jump into this thing that I told you beforehand, the kind of the plan,
go
the
for
grand
it.
plan.
Yeah,
and,
go for it.
So this is because I'm engulfed in this stuff. You know, any spare time that I have, this is what I'm looking at, and a lot of it ties back to Marxism, obviously. But this is a little stressful for people out there. If you've made it this far, I mean, we're kind of talking about a pretty stressful issue, but infecting the schools, okay, with dangerous ideologies. We've seen that with whether it's CRT or it's the DEI, just pushing Marxism in general, socialism, communism,
right?
All that kind of stuff, the transgender things, all that. So you put these dangerous ideologies into the schools. At the same time, you're downplaying them because you control the media. And so you allow that to spread without it having too much of an impact. Now
Right.
we're seeing that it's having an impact because we've got commentators like us and other people on the internet that are willing to speak out about it. At the same time, you're eroding the money supply, so you're not only weakening, our any wealth that we have accumulated, which across the country is minuscule, but you're eroding that. And you're also taking us down because the vision of people like George Soros and Barack Obama and all that was to not have us be the superpower. It's about globalism,
Right.
Zero borders, all that kind of stuff. So
Isn't that fascinating? It's all about globalism.
all about globalism.
One world economy,
Right.
one world government,
Yep.
one person, one voice being,
No borders.
and no borders. Yeah.
And then you have to keep people distracted when all this is going on. So we've got TikTok and we've got everybody's watching the funny cat videos and dog videos.
Hunter
and they're fun-
Biden's hearing today.
Right, Hunter Biden.
Like, and truthfully, it's
Yeah.
a distraction
It's an absolute distraction.
because who cares about this kid?
Yep.
We want justice.
Right.
But at this point, they're just name calling.
Yeah.
At this point, it's just ridiculous. Like, so go on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, then you turn media and politics into a blood sport so that the softer-hearted folks don't want to engage in it. So they turn it off and they just ignore it. And the people that are still watching are the ones that are mobilized. And those are the ones, the Antifas and the BLMs, and those people will be active and they will be doing the protests and burning down the cities. And those people, the Soroses of the world, will pay them to continue to do that. So you're wreaking havoc. You're ruining the money, the confidence, security. All of these things are taking place. And then you have to tweak everything to a point that it leads to, globally, by the way, you have to tweak things so that there is a provoked attack somewhere abroad. Well, now we have 8 million people who have come from abroad that are within, and that's going to spawn something that happens within as a response to whatever we do. So this is the globalism. When something happens in Iran, it's going to happen in Muskogee or some other town.
Right.
It's
New
gonna
Jersey.
It's going to happen
Yeah.
in New Jersey or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And so you're spreading the conflict, and no one can feel safe. No one can. This is all they're trying to do to us. And the people, and this is my opinion, there are only a few people who can help start us to move out of that, start the movement out of this rut. And they are not people who we have been told to vote for. They are people who everybody is attacking.
Well, yeah, because their tweets are terrible. And they're
Because they're right. And so
but I think in that regard, and this is a great thing to talk about, because if it's fixed, let's just hypothetically say we get this dyed-in-the-wool conservative, God-fearing conservative who's like legit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Loves the Lord, just kills it on the economy, kills it on immigration, kills it on everything that the conservative base is really all about, right? Is it going to fix anything?
the pressure's never going to stop.
Well, and here's where I'm going with this. If we read the signs of the times, right, there's one curious little tidbit, and that is that we're not really mentioned in the end times.
Right?
We're not mentioned at all. I mean, some people say that, well, the eagle, we're the eagle. And okay, all right, well, maybe we are. But other than that, we're not mentioned. Which tells me only one thing, and that is that America's got to unravel, because we're involved in everything,
Yeah.
right? But for us to not be mentioned in the end times means that we've got to be a non-factor.
Exactly. Yeah.
And for that to happen, it's almost like for that to happen, our economy has to shatter, right? We've got to all fall under this chaotic umbrella. No unity. No, because we can't be helping the world when we're having troubles at home.
Yeah. And I agree with that, but here's my take on it. We still, in my belief, we still have a duty to fight for it.
Yes.
And that is, because that's
I agree with you.
I've had a lot of debates with folks about where we are. People say that Christian nationalism is a new word that has popped up recently.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying people, because the people that have kind of co-opted that word, I guess, are saying that and people like Charlie Kirk, who's a very well-known commentator, he alludes to Christian nationalism, which basically means you have a national church, and it is driving almost as if a theocracy to fix the course of our country. I do not agree with that at all in any shape, form, or fashion.
Okay.
Me personally.
Okay.
What I believe is that the church is the church and the government is the government. And when you start polluting, every time that we have tried to have a partnership between religion and the federal government,
Yeah.
it is people corrupting the church. It's never the church uplifting the federal government.
Right, because we're on the ladder trying to lift them up. We can't.
Right.
Right. So, and I think Trump was a new thing in every capacity, really. Right. Nobody saw that coming. And I think where Kirk is going with that is that, it was clearly the evangelical. Listen, I heard pastors promote him from the pulpit.
Yeah. Promote
Trump.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's
they
like,
did.
Okay, guess what? No.
Right.
Like as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord, not Trump.
Right.
And I'm not voting. And it's very delicate because as a pastor, you can't get up there and it's like you can't get political. That's not your job. That's
Right.
not your mandate. That's not your kingdom mandate.
Right.
Render to Caesar what's Caesar's.
Right.
Right. We're all about the big G God, not the little G God.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so why waste your time if it's so precious on speaking politics?
Mm-hmm.
You don't vote your agenda. Even if it kills you, you vote God's agenda. Right?
Right.
Even if everything in you says, well, I don't know if I fully agree with that. He's always right. You always vote his agenda.
Yeah.
And if he says sin is sin, if he says this is what you're supposed to do, then you always vote for who's closest to that. And I'll admit there are times where it's like, okay, that's a little more godly, compassion or whatever
Yeah.
than what this guy's saying. And it just depends on where your values are. I did preach this, that, to somebody who came here recently, immigration is really on their heart.
Yeah.
Okay. They're against abortion, but immigration is more important to them. Mm-hmm. So it's got to be hard for that person because they're like, I can't vote for this guy because he's pro-choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's also very pro-immigration. What do I do? I got to flip a coin and go, okay, I'm going to vote for him because of my personal conviction on the importance of immigration.
Right.
Right.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So I get that. Both have good things in theory and sound, right? However, this past election, I think for the first time, we saw a big disparity in good things. Mm-hmm. We saw an ideology change, a shift.
A huge one.
Right?
Yeah.
Where it wasn't America first. It was build back completely different, build back better.
Yeah.
Right? So we're going to build is what it should have just been build, because they're even shifting our economy. They're pushing things through. Digital currency is a great example, right? We're going to be a digital society. It's just a matter of time. They're piloting it. And so you sit back and go, that's not building back better. That's just building. That's
Right.
just, we'll see what happens with it. But I think I want to bring that up because Democrat, Republican, whatever you vote, whatever it is, and you should vote. Everybody should vote. It's important to vote. That's your civic duty. It's also, I believe, your spiritual mandate. Mm-hmm. Okay? But in the end, God wins. He knows the end from the beginning.
Yeah.
And this is one that ruffles and bristles everybody's feathers, but it's scripture. It's God who appoints kings.
Yeah.
And so we can go, well, God did not. This is not God. No. He is the one who is going, I'm going to lift my hand and let this happen because I see the end from the beginning.
Right.
I know how this is going to unravel. The enemy plays right into his hands, which should give us a sense of peace.
Do you think that we're just, I don't want to get you too off topic on that because that's really good, but you spurred something in my brain. Do you think that, because we were founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and do you think God truly blessed this country Do you think that, because we're not mentioned anywhere in the Bible, obviously, and we're not mentioned in the end times, and really what matters, what happened at the time of Christ and what's going to happen in the end.
Bingo.
Right. But, I mean, do you think we're just another flash in the pan?
No, I think
grand scheme of
the difference is that now,
Because we're the first country to do this, by the way.
yes, God blesses those who bless Israel.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what we've done. And so, yes, I believe that we received that blessing before Israel was even a nation. I believe God knew we were going to uphold them. We were going to do stuff. And however, it's also like God to pull his hand away.
Yep.
Okay. And the danger is that we're in a season where you can sense the spiritual lifting that's happening. And yes, churches are there's revival happening. People are coming to Christ. I'm not negating what God is doing around the country in churches. Okay. However, in the government and what's happening in finance and what's right, like you can see the unraveling of things. And I believe that is because we've gotten away from him.
Yeah.
Right. And so his hand is coming up. And it happened to Rome. It happened to, right? It's like, it's no different.
Yep. It's no different.
Where when we turn our back on God, calamity is the next step.
Yeah. And
now,
I'm going to make a point on that because this is kind of what I was talking about before. We have, you said this a minute ago, it's our civic duty to do things. We have responsibilities in this whole massive system. Every person has a responsibility of some sort, whether that's inside of your family, whether that is inside of your community group, to be knowledgeable of what's going on in the world. Because when the government is filled with people we put there.
And I'll tell you, you can stop right there because that's not happening, right?
What's that?
The knowledge part.
The knowledge. No, it's not.
Because what happens is, like tonight, when I go to search for sanctuary cities and the results of being one, right?
Yeah.
I'm pulling up articles. If I hadn't looked at the date, be like, well, sanctuary city's not so bad.
Yeah.
Crime's about the same. It's benefited the economy. It's, so it's good. Until you got to do your homework.
Yeah.
You got to scroll down, find something from today.
Yeah.
Not what they're giving you. Find something from today. So even in your quest for knowledge and information, what they're giving you isn't the actual,
right.
You know what I'm saying?
You have to, it takes, unfortunately, and this is the unfortunate circumstance that we are all in. We don't get a straight answer from the first Google searches that we get.
No.
We have to do a bit of research or come here because we do a lot of research.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
Have more than one outlet where you are collecting information. CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, it reads as a headline and it is editorialized to the nth degree.
Fox, they're all in the tank, right? They're
absolutely.
It's all the same, and you're only getting two sides of this. You're getting two completely different sides.
Exactly.
But here's the thing: it's the same coin.
Yeah.
You're getting two sides of the same coin. Yeah. Whether you're listening to heads or tails, it's the same coin. It's built on distraction. I mean, it's built on deception.
Yeah.
It's built on not getting the full truth. The narrative is always slanted, and both sides are totally driven, and I believe this, to make people angry and to divide us.
Yeah.
Because this is what they want. A nation divided can't stand.
Right.
And so what we have is a bunch of people in think tanks, and they're just, all they're doing is it's the repetition. I mean, you've seen the newscasts where the headline is the same on every newscast, right?
Right, yeah.
I mean, we've all seen that. And
Yeah.
it's hysterical, but it's also terrifying because they're all getting the same this is what you're to say.
Yeah.
What? I mean, where's journalism gone, right?
Yeah.
Where's all that stuff gone? So,
But for us, we have to put our big boy and big girl pants on.
yeah.
And we have to inform ourselves. And I kind of made a comparison. I mentioned this in a previous video I'd done, but if not, if you can't handle it, because that's what people say, it's just, I don't want to look at it. I'm just going to go live my life.
Yeah.
A, we have to increase our pain tolerance, and B, we have to put our big boy, big girl pants on and at least do the research so that when we're having a conversation with a friend and they bring up something and you hear it and you say, that's a false narrative that has been run for a very long time.
Yep.
It's your duty to inform them because as we have, as a country, moved farther away from God, farther away from our Judeo-Christian principles, we are the ones to blame for that because we are the ones putting the people into office. There's a certain level of selection rather than election, which Dr. Briscoe mentioned that in that video,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And he's like, there's selections, not elections. That's the way I think of it. And he's correct. But we also have a right to show up at a town hall or show up at a meeting and call them out.
Well, and here's the thing. I think the selection part of it's not trickled down all the way. I think we have a massive amount of say in the under elections, right? The main ticket, they might select the president, but you better believe we've got the authority and the vote to go out and put people in office.
But
underneath
they
him.
try, and I'll give Vivek Ramaswamy as an example. He posted on his X account. I think it might have been yesterday, could have been today, but the Iowa
Caucus.
But the polls as leading up to Iowa to get into the debate and to get into the town halls with CNN, you had to have 10%. He had people reaching out to him say, "Hey, I got called by the pollsters, and the pollsters asked me, other than Donald Trump, who are you going to vote for, DeSantis or Haley?" And they said, "Neither. I'm going to vote for Vivek Ramaswamy. Can I give that as an answer?" And they said no. And he had multiple people who did this. They would not put him in the polls because why? He's a self-funded outsider. Wow. That is part of the selection. DeSantis is acceptable because his super PACs.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yep. So they weren't. They were like, nope, we're just not going to ask about. And so that's why he keeps in the polls at 5%.
Is that not election interference?
Yeah, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. Well, no, technically that's not. That's not because it has nothing to do with the election process. These are all processes outside of the actual election.
Even though you can't run unless you hit this threshold, and they're not allowing you.
No,
to
you can keep running.
Okay,
but you won't get onto the you won't get necessarily onto the ballot.
Wow, that's ugly.
Yeah,
that's ugly.
Yeah. So that's the stuff that we call out. I'm talking about it on Continue Freedom this weekend.
Yeah,
I'll be
tuning in
Yeah.
because it's fascinating to see how far they're willing to go.
Yeah.
This
is the spiritual warfare, man. We talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
This is truly a good versus evil inside of the most powerful country in the world.
Yeah.
That has done more good than any other country in the world. We are the most generous country in the world.
Absolutely.
We have fed millions and millions and hundreds of millions of people across the globe. We have given medical treatment to hundreds of millions of people across the globe.
You know what I do love
and they
too
want to tear it apart.
is that all of these things, these nefarious Black Lives Matter is a great example of this. You know, God says it'll be shouted from the mountaintop, right? You can try to hide who you are.
Yeah.
If you're doing wrong, it's going to be known. And I love how things like Black Lives Matter not only completely unraveled as a fraud, even though there's still people. I can't even fathom it. It's
I
like,
can't either.
what are you doing? Do you not realize that these people who founded this saw it as a money grab only? They don't care about you. They chant spirits. They call forth spirits of the dead. This is what they do.
Did they really?
That's what they do when they march and say his name.
Oh, yeah,
okay?
yeah.
They're calling
Okay.
the practice of calling forth spirits of the dead, trying to channel. The founders are nothing short of satanic.
Yeah.
And so all of it comes to light in the end because this is how God works. And I believe it's going to happen with Biden. I believe it's going to happen with this whole agenda. It's happening with COVID. Mm-hmm. Their nefarious plan to control, get the booster, knowing full well, I believe, that eventually it was going to be a population control mechanism.
Yeah.
I believe it with all my heart that their goal was and is, like Jane Goodall said last week in our, you know, when
if we could just kill a few
if
million
we can just
people,
kill a few million people,
billion,
everything will be
rather.
great.
She said billion, not million.
So, and that was a vehicle for that. It's being found out.
Yeah.
I mean, people are talking about it. I was reading, I didn't hear him, I didn't see him, but Fauci was on the stand this week again. I don't know if you've heard any of this, but he was back on the stand because they want to know, were we paying as a country for gain of function research in China of all places, right?
The answer, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's awful. So, yeah. But, you know, you did bring up at the beginning, right before we we launched here, you were talking about Ephesians
Yeah.
and putting on the armor of God. And as believers, I love this verse 11 in Ephesians chapter 6. Excuse me. It says in verse 10, finally, brethren, be strong in the Lord and the strength of his might, right? Mm-hmm. And it says to put on the full armor of God so that you can take a stand against the evil schemes of the enemy.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. Christ talks about just don't be deceived. Mm-hmm. The schemes, the plans, the things, and boy, are we seeing that in epic proportions today.
Epic proportions, yep.
Southern border being wide open. That's a plan of the enemy to make sure that we never have a conservative in office again. To make sure that we can go ahead and overturn Roe v. Wade, right? To go ahead and sacrifice children at the altar of convenience, which is really nothing more than historically, it's been in history since the beginning.
Child sacrifice.
To Moloch.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same demon, same spirit, and he's here, he's alive and well, and this is what we do. They want that back. The enemy wants that back. And so we're to put on the full armor of God and to remember that our struggle is not against flesh and blood. And I think that's something that so many of us in today's society, especially, it's so hard to focus on the fact because these are people making decisions and we want to look at them and be angry. It's not them.
It's what's driving them.
Don't be angry at them. Be angry at him. Be angry at Satan. Be angry at the devil because he's the one that's scheming, planning. He's the one that's orchestrating and pushing the buttons behind the scenes with his grubby little hands, you know? And so we're to put on the full armor of God so that when that comes, we'll be able to stand our ground. And I believe this year is going to be a year where we're going to see believers stand their ground. I think we're going to see some things. In fact, my daughter and I had a great conversation the other day. She had a text message from my niece about 2024. You know, you might want to take your money out of the bank, and you know, and it caused panic in her heart about it a little bit. You know, like what's going to happen, Dad? And is this the end? And I was like, okay, well, first of all, let's talk about the money in the bank thing. You know,
yeah,
how much you going to take out? How much you got in there? You know, and how long do you think?
$50.
Right. How long do you think $87 is going to last? Right?
Right.
But the concept is simple. Educate your kids in this. There's an enemy who's on the prowl. He is scheming. He is conniving. He is manipulative. And he is going after he's going after the soul of the nation.
Yep.
He's infiltrated the church. He's infiltrated. I mean, and I'm telling you this because I've heard 1,000 times when people go, well, yeah, Jesus is going to come back, and you know, a day is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day, and so let's not panic. I mean, it's, you know, for him, God's time is totally different, and so we shouldn't panic about this. We shouldn't, you know, it could be today, it could be in 100 years. I'm like, well, let's just stop it. It could be today, because since Christ, that's what the New Testament church did. They stopped at, I expect him today, and if you expect him today, you're going to live a little different than if you go, I expect him today or 1,000 years, right?
Right.
It's like the song Live Like You Were Dying. Remember that? I went skydiving, mountain climbing at 2.7
climbing. Oh boy, I'm about to start
2.7
singing on the internet.
seconds on a bull named Fu Manchu, right?
Right.
So it must have cost him a fortune to do all those things, first of all.
Right.
But the concept is true. If there are people in your life that you haven't shared the gospel of Jesus with that you love, this is a time to do it.
Yeah.
In fact, yesterday was the time to do it, and the day before that, because if we're living the way God wants us to live, we should be vocal about this, because he is coming. He said he was coming.
Yep.
And you know what? He has always fulfilled his promise. I've never seen him forsake me, let alone everything else that happened, right?
Yeah.
And now we look at it and go, look at Israel. He fulfills his promise. Israel is a nation. I mean, the deception, it's so wide. So we're to be informed. We're to do our homework. We're to put on the armor of God so that when the schemes happen, we don't sit back and fall for it. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you something that I'm really wrestling with is that, you know, since 19 46, 47, we've seen this uptick. We've seen a mountain climb of UFO sightings.
Yeah, we have.
What's going on there? And now it's validated, which came and went, and there were crickets. And we talked about that a little bit. But what in the world would make people turn their back on God? What kind of deception is there other than, and what's going to be the explanation for millions and millions and millions of people who disappear, right? It's going to, well, the aliens came. It's all about these crafts, right? It's all about this. And so you can see how the enemy, even in this, is scheming so that the people who are left here after Christ comes
Are deceived.
And they fall for something totally, totally different. And so, yeah, it just fascinates me.
That's interesting. I'd never thought of it that way.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't it make perfect sense?
It does make sense, yeah.
And what would cause a Christian's faith to be shaken? I don't know. A spaceship the size of a football field over Boston would cause your faith to maybe tremble a little, right? Like, wait a minute. But that's how the enemy operates. It's deception, sleight of hand, scheming, planning, the long game. And yeah, it hasn't stopped. So, but yeah, put on the armor of God and stand firm. I mean, really, he starts with stand firm with the belt of truth buckled around. Everything in armor back then, especially, hinged on the belt. The belt was everything.
Yep.
And the truth is the word of God. The truth is what God says about you. The truth is what God says about what's going to happen. The truth is always the truth, and it never changes. And so, yeah, that's my 2 cents. You got more. Go.
No, that's good.
So
the reason I brought that one up beforehand was that it's a combat related analogy, right? Which I can relate to as a former soldier.
Right.
I can definitely relate to that one. And so it's also, though, as I got into this, I got back into the Gospels, and I was kind of reading through it. But it's we don't sit, or we aren't called to simply sit in our safe space and say our prayers and go about and live our life and ignore everything that's going around us. I don't believe. We are people that are in this world, and we are in this world to spread the good word. We are in this world to carry on to spread God's kingdom, to grow his kingdom, and to do our part in that.
That's right.
And I believe that in this country, it's the hard distinction, right, between patriotism and loving your country and loving God. God obviously comes first and foremost above all else. But if a country can do what our country has been able to do because of the system that we had and because of the values that we all shared, that's something worth saving too, because, whether God comes back this year or he comes back in 500 years, who knows? Why would we not still do our responsibility to keep this a country based on Judeo-Christian principles that is the shining light on the hill that is able to spread God's word around the globe?
Right.
As it has done for a very long time.
Right.
And that's why I get passionate about it, because what better vessel to spread God's word, or not what better vessel, but what a great vessel this country has been when it is safe, when it is wealthy, when it is able to, and we are doing what, like you said before, what Rome did, the debauchery, what is right will be, what is right is wrong, and what's wrong is right, right?
Right.
And that's where we're moving, but we can still, I believe,
we can turn
around. And if God comes back and we didn't have time to do it, so be it. We'll be in a better place.
Right. But I think
but we'll still have that,
for believers, Ezekiel 33 talks about the watchman on the wall.
Yeah.
And it says, if you see it, and I'm paraphrasing, but if you see somebody coming with a sword, right, and you're a watchman and you don't sound an alarm, you're responsible for the.
You are.
Right?
Yes.
And so for me, I sit back and go, I don't want to be responsible for that.
Yeah.
I want to tell the world Jesus is coming. And you might be depressed about the current situation. You might be depressed about your marriage. You might be depressed about whatever it is. You might be hurting. And he says to bring all that stuff to him. Right?
Yeah.
And what does that look like? And for it looks different for everybody. I mean, I have my
does.
own issues, right, with it.
It
Like
does.
it's hard to lay something at his feet and go, God, you got to take this from me. However, that's exactly what you do. God, I'm feeling a struggle bus today. You got to take this from me. I need you. I need you to fill that part with your Holy Spirit, because I can't do this on my own today. And for us that have got that truly believe that this is the end, that we're living in the most fantastic time to be a believer ever. We should have a sense of urgency to share that with people that don't know Christ. Hey, your anxiety and your fear, man, Jesus will take those from you. And it's as simple as believing in him. You don't have to have your life in order. You don't have to be right. You don't have to have it all together. You just have to believe.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
And so if you're listening tonight, you're going through those things, the what was me's, man, I just want to encourage you. Number one, Jesus loves you. The Bible says that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, a man named Jesus. God became flesh, dwelt among us. And he loves you so much that he was willing to sacrifice his own life. And he lived a perfect, sinless life. He did nothing wrong in his life, and he still paid a sacrifice by dying on a cross for you. And if that wasn't enough, 3 days later, he resurrected, and it was witnessed by hundreds and hundreds of people. It's verified. All of these things happened for you to give you hope. You're not alone, and he promises you'll never be alone. Put your faith, your hope, your trust in Jesus, not in the government, not in chariots or the military, not in your AR-15, or in my case, your 30-30, right? I'd take that round over a 15 any day. Put your hope in Christ.
Yeah.
Because that's where your help's going to come from. And I was able to tell my 17-year-old daughter, like,
Although it doesn't hurt to keep your
no,
AR-15
you keep it
close.
loaded and it's good. Yeah. You never know when you're going to see a
never know.
varmint, right? But, I was able to tell my 17-year-old, like, babe, the God that we serve owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. He owns it all. And he's promised to take care of us. We don't have anything to worry about, no matter what happens. He's got us.
Yep.
He's promised. So, and he's always faithful to fulfill his promises. So, I just want to encourage you tonight that no matter what it looks like, the agendas, everything else, the enemy is scheming and trying to do his thing. I want to encourage you with the fact that God is still on the throne, and he's got you. So I think that's all I've got.
That was great. That's a good one to
For
close
that,
on.
Yeah. So, as always, man, we love hearing from you in chat. If you've got something on your heart that you want us to talk about or address, we'd love to hear from you at thebraverthantheRest@gmail.com. You can also go ahead and leave comments on our Facebook feed, our Rumble feed, our YouTube feed,
Everywhere.
all the other feeds.
Comments really help. Likes. Definitely
Yes.
give us a subscribe.
Definitely, please. And share on Spotify as well. A lot of people driving, a lot of people doing that stuff. You can listen to us anytime. Again, Braver Than the Rest, signing off. We love you. God bless.